It's 2 in the morning and you're on the bathroom floor. You don't even know why. The day was fine. You held it together for everyone. Then the house went quiet, something came loose, and now you're on the cold tile, trying hard to make no sound at all. You hear nails in the hallway. Your dog noses the door open. It doesn't bark. It doesn't wag. It walks across the dark room, lowers itself against you, its whole warm spine pressed into your back, lets out one long breath and stays. You never said a word. You made no sound it could have heard from down the hall. So how did it know to come? One easy answer: it didn't. You needed it to, and your sad brain wrote a story over a dog that just wanted somewhere warm to lean. The other is the one you want. Of course it knew, because it loves you. Both are a trap, because the truth is stranger than either one. It was never about what your dog knew. It's about which way it moved, toward you or away. In the wild, there's one law older than teeth. When something is hurting, you move away from it. A limping animal is a target. A sick one gets left behind. Every creature that survived learned that reflex in its bones. Do not walk toward weakness. Your dog does the exact opposite. It walks toward the hurt. So the real question was never whether it knows you're sad. It's why it's one of the only things on Earth that comes closer when everything alive is built to back away. Start with the thing you can't hide. You might think it just read your face, so take that away. Picture the days you don't cry. Dry eyes, steady voice, the face you've practiced so nobody at work ever asks if you're okay. You still can't hide it, because sadness isn't only a face, it's a smell. In 2022, in a lab in Belfast, a scientist named Clara Wilson sat 4 dogs in front of 2 sealed containers. In one, a person's breath and sweat, taken while they were calm. In the other, a sample from the same person minutes later after something stressful. To you and me, both tubes smell like nothing, like glass. The dogs picked the stressed one almost every time, across more than 700 tries, about 9 times in 10. And these weren't pets reading someone they'd lived with for years. They were strangers. When you start to come apart, your chemistry changes, and it leaks out of you, in your breath, off your skin, as a smell with your fear written into it. So you can keep your face still and tell everyone you're fine, but you cannot lie to the thing curled against your back. It is quite literally breathing you in. So no, it isn't your imagination. It knows. But knowing is one thing. Walking toward it, that's another. And the dog who proves it best had already been thrown away. In 1991, in England, a Royal Navy officer named Alan Parton came home from the Gulf War, and the man his family knew did not come back with him. A head injury had erased him. He couldn't walk. He couldn't read. He looked at his own wife and his 2 children and felt nothing. The part of him that did the feeling was simply gone. He spent years in that fog, angry and silent, the marriage all but gone, the man inside it ready to give up. Years later, a Labrador named Endel, a dog the program had nearly given up on, wandered over, and he chose the man nobody else could reach. He learned more than 100 of Alan's commands, many of them silent hand signals from a man who could barely speak. And slowly, a person who couldn't feel anything started to feel one thing: that this animal needed him to get up in the morning. Then came the night that tells you what was really happening. A car clipped Alan's wheelchair and threw him to the pavement, unconscious. Nobody had trained the next 60 seconds. Endel rolled the limp body into the recovery position, dragged a blanket over him, worked the phone out from under the car, and went for help. Endel stayed at his side for the rest of the dog's life, and Alan spent it saying one sentence: Endel brought me back to my wife. Endel brought me back to my children, not the doctors. A dog nobody wanted, who reached into a man who could no longer feel and switched the lights back on. And at the start, Alan couldn't even love him back. There was no reward in it. That's not a trick you teach with treats. That's a creature deciding a broken man was worth staying for, which is exactly when the doubter, and his argument is good, so we let him talk. None of this is love, he says. It's bookkeeping. Your dog has learned, the way it learned where the food is kept, that when your voice drops and the salt smell arrives, pressing into you earns petting and a soft hand. It isn't feeling your sadness, it's reading the cues and cashing them in. And we, desperate to be loved, paint a whole devotion over a slot machine that paid out once. It's clean. It explains the treats, the years of history. So let's test it. In 2018, 2 researchers named Emily Sanford and Julia Myers Manor ran a study they nicknamed Timmy's in the Well, after Lassie. A person sits behind a clear glass door a dog can shove open with its nose. The person is told to do one of 2 things: hum a tune or cry. When they hummed, most dogs pottered around. When they cried, the dogs that opened the door opened it 3 times faster, about 20 seconds, against nearly 2 minutes. But here's the part that breaks the skeptic. Some dogs didn't open the door at all. You'd read that as the ones who didn't care. It's the opposite. The researchers were tracking heart rates, and the dogs who froze were the most stressed in the whole study. They weren't ignoring the crying, they were drowning in it. Their person's pain hit so hard it locked their body in place. The ones who looked like they failed were the ones who felt it most. You cannot teach a body to do that for a treat. And it isn't only dogs. Watch a herd of elephants when one of them goes down. They don't scatter the way every survival instinct says they should. They circle in. They press their trunks to the fallen one's face, its back, its mouth, the most defenseless place it has, and they stand there, for hours sometimes, over a body that isn't even their own. Nobody taught them that. There's no treat at the end of it. And the same impossible move shows up in apes, and even in crows, a bird so far from your dog that the two haven't shared an ancestor in hundreds of millions of years, doing its own version of walking toward the hurt instead of away. Moving toward pain costs you, and evolution kept it anyway, because the families that drew close around their hurting ones, instead of leaving them in the dark, are the ones that survive to make us. Comfort is the oldest glue there is, and somewhere along the way, your dog turned it toward you. And still, here's the honest part. We can measure all of it and reach none of it. We can chart the cortisol, name the smell, time the door. What we can't get to is the inside. Whether, behind those eyes, any of it feels the way it feels in you. The science walks you to the edge of that room and stops, and the animal goes in alone. Which brings us to a cat, and to where this stops being about pets at all. His name was Oscar, and he lived on the 3rd floor of a nursing home in Providence, Rhode Island. The staff didn't much like him, aloof, didn't want to be held. But he made rounds like a doctor on shift, and every so often he'd choose one room, climb onto that person's bed, and settle. And within a few hours, that person would die. A doctor named David Dosa, who worked the floor, wrote about him in 2007. By then, Oscar had kept that vigil through more than 24 deaths. By some accounts, the number would eventually pass 50. It happened so reliably that the staff made it a rule. When Oscar settled onto a bed and stayed, you called the family, because it was time. And no, nobody can prove what he understood. The likeliest answer is that a dying body gives off a faint chemical signature, and a cat's nose found it. But what he did is documented, and it's enough. Because picture the ones whose families didn't make it in time, who would otherwise have left the world in an empty room with no one to notice them go. The oldest fear there is. And instead, a small creature who didn't even like to be touched climbed up beside them and stayed, so that the last living thing next to them had decided, for no reason we will ever name, that no one should have to do this part alone. That's what you were really asking, down on the bathroom floor at 2 in the morning. Not whether your dog can smell your cortisol, whether the part of you falling apart in the dark, the part you never say out loud, could be seen. Without you having to explain it, without holding it together for one more second. And it walked in. It didn't lick your face or ask you for anything. It just leaned its whole warm weight into your back and breathed and stayed. You were so sure no one saw. Something did, and it never left the floor.